This presentation is brought to you by the MFOA.
Hello everyone, and welcome to MFOA's Asset Management Webinar Interactive Panel Discussion. Before we begin, I'd like to explain how to manage this session, which is different from previous webinars. This webinar is approximately 90 minutes in length with no presentations from the experts. The purpose of this webinar is to simply provide you with the forum and opportunity to ask questions and initiate discussions with your colleagues and with the expert panel we have here with us today. You, the participants, are generating the content for today's session. And now I'd like to introduce your panel of experts. Andrew Mirabella joined the municipal finance practice at Hemson Consulting Incorporated as a consultant in the summer of 2009. He has been involved in projects dealing with asset management, setting water and wastewater rates, and preparing development charges background studies for various municipalities in Ontario. Andrew received his Bachelor of Urban and Regional Planning from Larson University. Dan Wilson is a director with Watson and Associates. He has extensive experience in areas of municipal governments and public accounting auditing firms before joining Watson. Since joining Watson in 2006, Dan has led the asset management, PSAP compliance, tangible assets and full accrual financial statement presentation, and water/wastewater financial plan services. Arundus Kalinauskas has over 25 years of experience. He has focused his work on the development of applications and commercialization of GIS technology. Arundus has been leading the Burnside asset management team for the last 10 years. As such, he has also led developers and strategic partners in the development of easy-to-use, effective asset management and capital planning tools. In this role, Arundus has been formulating solutions that combine client expectations with engineering expertise gathered from Burnside's engineering staff. Arundus has led teams of staff and partners through the complex process and completion of many municipal asset management plans for municipalities ranging from rural communities to large urban centers. He has also provided consulting input to both municipal and First Nation asset management strategies. Terry Martins is a professional engineer with over 20 years of experience helping municipal organizations make better decisions regarding their infrastructure investments. He has led the strategic development and implementation of asset management solutions for Peel, Halton, and other municipalities across Canada. Terry is a Libra who enjoys long walks on the beach and also autumn sunsets. So thank you very much for all of you for being here today, and we're very excited to have them join us. So let's get started.
As Eunice had outlined, the objective of this webinar is just to provide you with the forum and opportunity to pose questions and discuss and share any successes or challenges that you have come across in your asset management journey with your colleagues and the panel of experts that we have on the webinar today. The content is generated by you, for you. So we encourage you once again to ask the questions and initiate the dialogue in order to have a meaningful discussion to benefit you.
So these are the past asset management webinars that we've had. The first one is asset inventory, refining your cost, valuation, and condition. There were two parts which took place on November 6th and 29th. Here is a quick overview and what you've learned. And there are two links at the bottom. If you missed these webinars, you can purchase them on our on-demand site. The next one we have is the Basics of Service Delivery Levels General, which took place on January 22nd. Here's the quick overview as well, and if you've missed it, you can download the webinar here.
So next is the meat of the webinar, and again, at any time, feel free to chat a message in, and we will open the dialogue at that time, or raise your hand, and we'll identify you only by your first name, just to make sure that everyone is comfortable with having discussion in today's webinar. So we're going to open the polls right now. We're going to have 5 quick polling questions, a few just to get a sense of who is on the line right now for your reference, and then a couple to just get a sense of what your challenges are. So the first poll question is open now, is what is the size of your municipality? And again, some of you might have already answered this in the registration process, but just to have everyone see online and get a sense of who's on the line. So we'll have the poll open, and
so this is just a quick snapshot of all the participants and where the size of their municipalities. So the next question we will have.
So where are you in the asset management plan process? Again, if you can just quickly put your answer down, that would be great. Okay, so we've got 50-50. Half of you are currently working on your first draft, and the other half are currently refining, improving, and expanding. Okay, great. Next poll is, what is the greatest challenge you're currently facing with the asset management process? Okay, so we've got some people who their greatest challenge is improving information and communication between departments. We've got quite a few of you that have responded saying that you've got lack of time and capacity. We also have some that are having issues with knowing where to get source materials or lack of resources. And then a good number of you are also getting having challenges getting council buy-in. So does anyone want to talk about, anyone that answered the number 1, improving information communication departments, does anyone have any comments or questions pertaining to that they'd like to expand upon? Okay, or any of the other challenges that have been outlined. Feel free to just type in your challenge or your insight into what your challenge is, and we'll open it up for dialogue.
Oh, so we do have a quick question. The question is, what did you do to get interdepartmental cooperation?
So that's a question to the other municipalities that are on the line right now. Anyone have willing to share what their municipality has done and what has worked for them in order to improve communication between the departments?
Okay. Hi, everyone. We've been doing a couple of the asset management plans, and what we found that works well is you got to get everybody in the workshop or in a room together and get them talking and understanding what it is you're trying to achieve and what it is they're trying to achieve and what are some of their hurdles. So we've seen where we've gone in and one department has really good information, has a pretty good handle on their assets and what needs to be done, whereas you might see another group. So, water, for example, is a good one where so much stuff is regulated, they just tend to have very good information about the system, whereas you get into some of maybe the facilities groups where they have a single, inventory of all the buildings, and they don't really have a good handle on how they're going to develop these asset management plans. What we found works really well is to get everybody in the room together, talk about everything that needs to be in the asset management plan, from understanding the inventory and the needs of the assets, right through to the details that are going to go into the asset management plan, and then work with the departments that have a little bit less information to see if we can get them closer, or if we can make some assumptions and just get better information that's similar or at I guess close to the level of detail that the other groups have. So that's what we found has worked.
Great, thank you. Any other comments, feedback from any of the expert panel or anyone from other municipalities? We have one response saying, don't do what we did. Make sure you get backfill and don't burn out staff. So those sorts of insights are equally, if not more important, of what has worked and what hasn't worked. So thank you for that.
Dan, you have the floor.
Hi, this is Arundus. I just wanted to add a few points to the last question or comment. From our experience, it really took for some departments a few sessions or meetings or workshops until they realized that the asset management plan process of going through the details of condition and identifying levels of service, once they devoted a few sessions to that, they really bought into the process. it almost seems like the lights turned on and they saw the value that they would receive out of the process. Until they get that value, it's really tough pulling them along.
All right, thank you. We do have a question. This is to all the participants here today. How many of participants are in finance? Are you feeling that the asset management plan is an accounting exercise? Can anyone speak to that, or their personal situations or experiences? Mike, you have the floor.
Hi, this is Mike from Newmarket. I feel like I'm in an AA meeting that I can only say my first name. But that's interesting, that comment about finance, because we found we were stalled, we as a town were stalled getting this project going, and I, being from finance, not because I've been from finance, but I just wanted to get going, mostly because I saw we were going to start losing out on some eligibility for grant opportunities. So we formed a task force on that basis, but we then had this perception going around that it was a finance project, and I mean, you hear everything, you read anything in the literature. It is obviously not just a project that is involving one discipline. It requires all disciplines. We all have to work together, but we had to fight that perception. And I've had, even now, we've only done the basic plan. We have to now expand it. We have some departments talking about, well, I guess it's done now, sort of thing. I've had counselors who don't even recognize it, other than the fact that that we can get grants. But yeah, it's definitely not a finance. And as I went through it, my eyes were open to a lot of things that really confirmed, you know, you can read all you want, but it really confirmed that when you get into things like the condition assessment and have to move away from just the age of your assets and what's involved in that. And I mean, we're just touching the touching the surface on getting to operational efficiencies and how this is going to impact that. You really see that it's more than just a finance thing, but it's the stigma that, in most cases, what I've seen, it is led by finance. It tends to end up in finance. It's seen as a finance project, and that almost dooms it. It's almost because it's just an offshoot from TCA, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mike. We have Dan or Arundus, I think, to respond to that. And
yeah,
then
it's Dan Wilson speaking. Just to add to that, I think it's critical to have all departments involved in the asset management plan process, and I'm a finance person, and as much of it's difficult for me to say, if you just do a finance related exercise, you're not going to have as an accurate an asset management plan as if you would involve all municipalities. There are certain parts of an asset management plan, like determining level of service, and some municipalities may start off focusing in on useful life, but when you progress and make your asset management plan a little more accurate, you're going to be more concerned with calculating remaining service life based on condition. And to have that condition information and to have that level of service information, you really need the expertise of all the people who deal with those assets. So to strictly go based on a financing exercise may get you going initially, but it's really important to involve the other departments.
sorry, thank you. Next we have Terry and then Andrew. Terry, you're up. You have a comment?
Hi. Yeah. Just going along with what Dan was saying, we've been involved in a couple of projects with Watson, and they've been led by finance. But as Dan said, by bringing the engineering thinking in the background, it helps improve the details that are feeding the financial plan. What we've found is when we get involved in these projects, whether it's led by engineering or it's led by finance, you really do have to make sure both parties are at the table, because there's a bunch of things that you guys on the finance side need to do in order to report on the information and track the assets and track the money, whether it's capital or operating, and the engineers and the operators don't think about that, and honestly probably don't care about it. Whereas, and then on the reverse side, if finance is driving it, there's a bunch of things that the engineers and the operations folks need to do to manage the assets and keep them working and minimize the spending on those assets. And if you're not both at the table, then you're not going to have the right information. You're always going to have a disconnect. So you're going to have information and thinking on how the engineers and the operators are managing the assets, and a different set of thinking and information feeding the finance side. So you do need them to talk together. And Dan, we were involved in a project, and I don't have the exact numbers, but I remember we've done a couple of presentations where we've shown the difference of using better information to support the asset management plan. And the example was something like, I don't know, we were looking at roads for a small municipality, and based on just ESL, it was something in the number of 800 roads and 120 million in replacement that was required, looking at just ESL. Then we brought in condition because they had condition, and it dropped it from something like 800 roads down to 350 or 300 roads that actually needed to be replaced or needed some kind of work. And then looking at that, so looking at condition and just replacement, it dropped it to 300 roads and I think something like 70 million or some ballpark like that. And then we started looking at, well, what do the operations folks really do? So shave and paves and different technologies. So we looked at condition and we looked at rehab and replacement, and the final number dropped down to you still had 350 roads that needed something done to it, but when you were looking at rehab as well as replacement, that number dropped from the 70 million down to about 40 million. So that first financial cut being a lot of roads and a lot of money, when we brought in the engineering and the operations thinking, we brought that down to a much more realistic kind of plan. That's it.
Thank you. And next we have Andrew. You're up.
Hi, yes, this is Andrew Mirabella. Just echoing, I guess, everyone's comments here, and I couldn't agree more. Really, where we think the quality of the results of your asset management plan is really best when you do collaborate between all departments, finance, engineering, and then especially when we always talk a lot about the core infrastructure assets, but when you move away to your non-core assets, and especially in a small municipality where people hold, I guess, the most knowledge, people, I guess, even your library and your fire chief and your recreation departments, bringing in those department heads and those departments into the asset management plan development is going to absolutely be beneficial and really produce a quality product at the end of the day. So I just, nothing new here from what I'm saying, from what everybody else is saying, but I just stress the importance of a collaborative process to develop your plan. That's it for me.
Thank you, Andrew.
So we do have a comment from a fellow participant. Based on their municipality, the plan was driven by finance, but roads, water, and sewer received the most benefit. So thank you for that comment. We do have another question. So for municipalities, who led your project, and where did the asset management land in your organization?
So this question's opened up to the municipalities. If you can type in your comment of who led it in your municipality, or you can raise your hand and offer to provide some additional detail. Thank you.
Mike, take the floor. It's yours.
Oh, thank you. I actually raised that question. We've done our first phase of the plan. One of the things that's delayed us getting the project off the ground was getting a little jurisdictional fight over where the asset management was going to end up. And so now we've done the plan. It was led by finance. It did have participation from all departments, so that was good. But now we're stalled out as to what we're going to do next. We have to obviously expand the plan, take it to other areas, take it beyond the 10 years, make it more useful. But we're at a loss as to where that's going to land in the organization, whether that's going to entail another position, what level that position would be. I've seen different structures where it reports directly to the senior, the CAO, to commissioner, to director within their department. But we're kind of stuck right now, and it's it has the potential of going political, but determining small p political, but determining where an organization is one of the key things that we're going to have to wrestle with next. So I posed that question to get some feedback, because I see that I think about half of you had done their first phase of the plan. So I was wondering if any organizational decisions were made on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
We do have a comment as a follow-up as well. So Department Treasurer led plan All departments were required to participate with support from the CAO.
So thank you. That's another municipality answering who led the AMP in their municipality. Thank you. We have Terry. You have a comment? Terry Martins?
Yeah, hi, it's Terry. Yeah, sorry about that. I muted myself. So a couple of things I was going to say on that. I agree that whether it's finance or it's public works, whoever leads it, the reality is you have to. Everyone knows that everyone has a role to play. We're doing some asset management strategies or plans right now or frameworks, and one of the things we've been doing is actually color coding components of the overall asset management strategy, which is going to derive that plan and identified who has what pieces. So there's a corporate piece that looks at things like customer levels of service and KPIs and things like that, and the direction that the organization wants to go. There's a program or departmental piece, which is each of the groups that manage the assets coming back and saying, here's my information, here are my levels of service that I'm trying to achieve, and here's what I need in order to achieve that. And then that's being fed into the finance pieces that take that information and then make decisions and come up with your plans and your financial strategies to support that. So I think it's important to recognize that everyone has a piece, and the better you can kind of lay that out and get everyone to understand what those different pieces are, then they're more willing usually to jump in and take ownership of that piece. When it comes to, when you mentioned before about where does this sit, I got kind of two comments on that. I'd say, number one, every time I've seen an asset management implementation or strategy or framework or anything along those lines, any kind of initiative successful, it usually involves there's a champion in the organization that's going to push this thing through. If you've got someone leading it that is, if you've got 2 or 3 other initiatives and this isn't their focus, they don't tend to be as successful. Where I've seen when you have that one person that is just driving this and they're going to make sure that this thing goes through, that champion is one of the key components I've seen. And then as far as where it sits, I've seen it in different areas. We did work in Peel, and they happen to have their asset management group in finance. In places like Halton right now, it's in public works, and finance is working with them. I think it really comes down to wherever it is, they have to have the authority to really push what the asset management plan, the information you need to support it, and basically your asset management environment. They've got to have the authority to push to get the things done. So whether it's finance or whether it's public works, I think it's going to be different for every organization. Thanks.
Thank you, Terry. And Dan, you're up. You have a comment?
Yes, just to follow up on what Terry's saying, I agree it's important to have a champion, and at the same time it's important to have everybody involved. But what I stress is to have some type of policy in place that allows for a consistent application and a consistent update of your asset data and your asset management plan from one department to another. If you're getting into a process where you have risk ratings or criticality ratings that you want to evaluate organization-wide, so is a fire truck replacement more important than a road reconstruction, as an example, then you want to be able to consistently apply those criticality scores or those risk scores so that you can compare one project to another. So I think it's important to involve everybody, but at the same time have a policy that everybody can apply consistently.
Thank you.
We do have a comment. More buy-in might come if federal gas tax or OCIF, Community Infrastructure Fund, want proof that AMP is in place and working, otherwise grants are in jeopardy. So thank you so much for that comment. We do have another question. Moving on. Council buy-in, they think we did it just to get more grants. They have not even read the reports.
So that was one of a comment from a municipality. Does anyone have any comments or feedback or questions pertaining to that? Or any other comments regarding the poll that's on your screen? We have a comment from Terry. Please go ahead.
I think that's a great comment. I was having a good chuckle when I heard that, and I think you're not alone when you. A lot of times these things, a lot of people are putting them together just because they're being told to put them together, or pull these things together so that they can satisfy the provincial need. But I think what we're finding is you've got to produce it, whether you have to produce it or not. The overall concept behind the asset management plans is what's important. It's forcing municipalities to say, I want to have an understanding of what my assets are, what the condition is, how they're performing, tie that to some kind of level of service expectation so that you can make better decisions about where to spend the money. So although I appreciate the comment, I think it's great, it's a funny comment, and it is true, it's something that's so important for the departments or the programs to put together anyway, because it just justifies why you're asking for the money to spend on your assets.
Great, thanks, Terry. Dan, you have a question? Or Arundus, sorry.
Yeah, excellent commentary. I would add to that councils are going to be pushed more and more in this way, and I think it's how you present this information to council and how you include council in all of those decision-making processes. So if you've got council input into levels of service, now you've got more buy-in at the core level. If you're just presenting final results to council, they will gloss over it and probably, as was commented, not even read it. They need to be involved in this process because they tie up the purse strings of where the money is supposed to go. So really focus on how you're going to present this to council, and it might not just be one presentation, it's going to be a group of things, and you have to set up a strategy of how you're going to present small bites to council so that they can digest it and realize the importance of these decisions. Thanks.
Thank you, Arundus. Andrew, you have a comment?
Hello, sorry. Just kind of adding to the importance of council. Really, it's, we want to update them and kind of inform them early and often is kind of what we say. And getting them involved and getting their feedback and putting them right into the mix of the process really gets, really shows at the end of the outcome, at the end of your plan, what your result is. And it's obviously easier for them to buy into something that they've kind of had input all along into and, part of the decision-making process. So I just, just having that council input and a council dialogue during budget season or, throughout the actual term of the year is really going to help strengthen your plan when it comes time to complete. And then even when it is complete, you want to just keep bringing them back and bringing them forward with new decisions and discussion. That's all for me. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Andrew. So this is great discussion and great questions and comments, so keep them coming in. Again, at all times, feel free to type a question into the chat box, or you can raise your hand and we will open the virtual floor to you. In the meantime, we have a couple of, 2 more quick polls, just so that we can help from an MFOA perspective how best to help support you. So the next question is, what type of support do you require most? Okay, so hands down, best practices is a really strong type of support that is required, and that's where we try to, from a training perspective, to highlight other municipalities and what they're doing. So thank you very much for that. And then we'll do one more poll, and then I see that we've got Dan on, and we'll do one more poll, and then we'll have Dan speak. Just a sec. So last poll, again, just to help you, help us help you. What is the best support channel for your municipality? And we'll open up the poll now and await your responses. Okay, so we've got website and face-to-face, and then other. Does anyone have a comment for anyone who added in other? Would you be willing to share either through chat or raising your hand what you mean by other? In the meantime, while that person is chatting, Arundus, you have the floor. You have a comment?
Yeah, I thought the 80% of the listeners commented that they're really interested in best practices, and I would suggest just going through these webinars is a first step. Another one, I'm going to plug the MFOA's conference in the spring in March, and I guess you can give the details later. But I would also suggest involvement in an organization that we're involved in, the Canadian Network of Asset Managers. I would suggest that that's probably the best organization on the whole of asset management as topic, as information, as sharing and networking, because you're going to have a lot of people from both engineering and finance all mixing together and trying to further define what are those best practices and really pushing that forward in municipalities across the country and getting good perspective from all around. But excellent thing that you're looking for best practices. I think those with experience, you look at Terry and Dan and Andrew having a lot of good background because we've been involved in this area for a long time.
Great. Thank you very much, Arundus. So the person that did outline other responded that they wanted to say that it was all of the above. So other included all of the answers. So thank you very much for that response. So this is great. Keep the questions and comments coming in. And we're going to move on to our next part of the webinar. And we'll turn it over to Mike, who can share some highlights for the Newmarket Asset Management Plan. Mike, you have some words of wisdom to share with us, please.
I don't know how wise I'll be, but I will share some of our experience. Just to let you know, I also have Cindy, last name withheld, here as well, who's from Newmarket. She was on the team that did our asset management plan, and she's our corporate project consultant. We had a multidisciplinary team. We also had people from engineering, public works, and so on and so forth. Newmarket was kind of surprised by actually how difficult this project would be, because we thought we were sort of, we had false pride on this. We thought we'd be ahead of the game, because we, back in the late 90s, we started an asset management plan, an asset replacement fund to fund the replacement of our assets, and we had estimates on what we thought the costs would be. We would put money into reserves, so we had done some preliminary analysis of that. Then we also, when it came time to do the tangible capital assets, we did that all in-house, and we were, again, feeling quite puffed up with our egos and all that we can pretty well handle anything. So we thought this would be not that bad, but as I mentioned before, we had some difficulty just getting off track, started on this project as to who was going to lead it. There was some dispute, some territories, some barriers were being put up and all that, but as we came closer and closer to the deadline of December 31st, 2014, and we saw that there were grants that we were not going to get because we didn't have an asset management plan, that kind of put fire under everyone's feet. So that got things going. So my proposal to move ahead as lead on this project, that worked. As I said previously, part of the stigma of it being led by finance is that people say it's a finance project, and therefore it's harder to get their buy-in and say, no, we're trying to be all-inclusive and get everything in. As we all know, that is necessary. So we developed a team that was majority members from outside the finance area. Our sponsor from senior management was the Commissioner of Development and Infrastructure Services. So other than myself, there really actually was no direct finance impact in it. What we found, though, the best practices, there's a lot. There's quite an abundance of stuff out there on asset management plans. And you can almost get drowned in the amount of information. But we found, we started with the building together, the outline there, and used that as the template for our plan. And we went to other municipalities, saw how they embellished that, and used that as a starting point. So a lot of our ideas are not necessarily original, but there's a lot of information out there which can be shared. As we went through the process, we had a lot of aha moments where if I ever thought, if I even had the least bit of a dream that this could be a completely financed project, that was quickly squashed as we found out we need to take into consideration condition assessments. We need to, there are things of the process I didn't know as we looked into how decisions were made. And also we were able to help the other departments, and I believe they appreciated that as we came to appreciate more of what they were doing, but also they saw some of the value we were adding as we were able to uncover some holes in their processes. For instance, we found on the underground works, we didn't really have a good way of projecting forward what our requirements were going to be. So we came across a few discoveries in that. But what we found, even though we just did the basic 4 asset classes, the roads, bridges, water, and wastewater, even though we just did that, the foundation was set for expanding into the future. We established principles as far as financing is concerned, as far as asset management is concerned, and as far as the service levels. What we did as a starting point, we just took our existing service level and said that was the desired service level, which then needs to be authenticated at some point by council. That will be part of our next steps, is to workshop to council to see if we can get them to actually read the report and get the buy-in there, get some more public involvement. And we're looking to expand the program this year. So to take it into, we have some other critical assets like our storm sewers, our buildings, and take it beyond 10 years as well. So this is where we're looking to expand, but we're having a little bit of roadblock now as to where in the organization it's going to fit. I'll ask Cindy if she has anything quickly she wants to add to that.
Thanks, Mike. I think you've really summarized that very well about our process and how we managed to get through that within a very, very short period of time. And if I could just reiterate, it did definitely need a champion, and Mike was that champion in our organization. And I think with his commitment and determination to keep the group going together and his communication upwards to senior management and to the group, Mike was our conduit between our steering group and our sponsor and our strategic leadership team. So although the working group itself that I served on, we were the ones that rolled up our sleeves and got into it and wrote the plan. It did take a lot of coordination by Mike and communication amongst other staff resources that we got involved, our senior leadership team, our operational leadership team, so that means our commissioners and directors, as well as keeping us all together. And that communication skill that Mike had throughout the process was invaluable.
Thank you very much. That's great information, and thank you very much for willing to share where you are in the asset management plan and challenges and insights that you have had going through this process. So as always, feel free, other registrants who are on the line, to respond to what Mike and Newmarket has gone through and what they've highlighted. In the meantime, while we're waiting for responses to come in, we have Andrew. If I believe you have a comment?
I do. Sorry, I was talking and I was on mute. So anyways, sorry, Mike, not to take away from what you were talking about, I just wanted to go back to the polling on the benchmarking and how, everyone was kind of very interested in what everyone else is doing. And I just thought it'd be a good opportunity to turn the attention to MFOA has posted 6 tip sheets on asset management and really revolves around a lot of benchmarking and common practices and principles out there in preparing your plan and how to present that plan to council, and a bunch of other capital budgeting tips and such. So just I thought that seeing how much of an interest there is on what everyone else is doing on the benchmarking side of things, They are posted online, the tip sheets, through MFOA's website, so it may not be a bad idea to take a look at those. I guess I could turn it back over to the Newmarket side.
Hi, Dan Wilson. You have a comment as well?
Yes, just to comment on Newmarket's their philosophy of setting level of service, the current level of service equals expected levels of service for their initial plan. I think that was a great idea. I've had quite a few municipalities I've been working with that, whether they haven't been through a level of service discussion before or they're not comfortable making decisions on level of service without having council consultation or public consultation, at least having some type of level of service analysis that at least explains what you're doing now is a great start, and then you can decide how to expand on that later, but at least gets you going on that level of service discussion. And what it can help you do going forward is you can decide how you want to integrate level of service into your, not only in your asset management plan, but how it integrates into your day-to-day work as an organization. So some municipalities, they do strategic planning every 5 years or so. You can make level of service part of that strategic planning process where council is passing a strategic plan. They can also pass the level of service that supports the strategic plan and also supports the asset management plan. So starting level of service by making current level of service equal expected level of service is a great start, and then you can take some time to decide how you want to expand on that later.
Thank you, Dan. Mike, you have a comment?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for those comments, gentlemen. Andrew, I just wanted to say that we actually, I'm sorry, I went really quick in my presentation. I should have better budgets and year-end or make me think too fast. But anyway, we did look at, there's a lot of excellent materials on the MFOA website. I've pretty well attended every webinar, and we did use a lot of information there, a lot of the templates for our plan. There was a lot of good materials there, and you know what, I got to say, if it weren't for that, we would have been really, really struggling. And Dan, thank you for your comments on the level of service. What we also did in our plan, we justified that. So we didn't just say we're being lazy and we're starting with that as the desired level of service equals the existing level of service. We were able to support it somewhat based upon number of customer complaints to show that the volume of complaints we're getting on the assets are extremely low, so that indicates that there must be some community acceptance of the level of service, that council, by passing the budgets as representatives of the community, therefore is acknowledging that as long as we're making those capital expenditures, that is the desired level of service. It was a bit of a hard sell, actually, to some of the other departments and other people on the plan to get that, but again, we started late, we had a limited amount of time, and I got to tell you, nothing like necessity makes things move quick. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. So next in the agenda we have Essa Township. Oh, sorry, we just have Terry. You have a comment on that before we move on?
Yeah, I was just going to say that that's Mike. That's a great the approach you're taking there, where you're tying some of these details from your asset management plan to something that actually matters to councillors and to the customers through customer complaints is a huge piece in making this thing work and making this thing kind of getting the buy-in at the council level. And we've heard some really good comments today about how to involve council. But I think you hit a nail on the head there. You know, going back and reporting on levels of service of things like so many water main breaks per 100 kilometers. You know, that's one that councillors have heard enough that maybe they're starting to understand. But if you could tie that to, well, that equals so many customers either out of water or so many complaints about water, those kind of tying them to those kind of measures are going to be key. So what you've done there about looking, you've kind of gone the other way and said, well, let's look at where we have problems in our level of service based on customer complaints is a really great first step. And I think that's something for, I just want to kind of point out that that's a really important part of this for everyone. As you go through it, when you think about, you know, when you're sitting there with the detailed folks who are managing the assets and they're talking about, I want to see, you know, not more than so many breaks or so much downtime or whatever, try and think about that at the high level of what does that mean to senior management and council? Does that mean complaints? Does that mean boil water advisories? Whatever they are, and try and relate those and report those at the higher end instead of the detailed ones, and I think you'll get more success. That's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments or responses to that before we move to the next part of the webinar? Okay, well, feel free to keep typing in the chat box or raising your hand. In the meantime, we have Asset Township, Jeff Bridges, who is also willing to share about their asset management plan. Jeff? Just having a little bit some audio issues with Jeff. I think he's calling in. In the meantime, we have a question.
This question is, what are municipalities using? Database, Excel spreadsheets, in-house IT, or canned software? So this is to the floor for everyone as participants based on your municipality. Any suggestions or what you guys are doing, best practices?
As well as to the resident experts, what have you seen municipalities use typically? We'll just open the floor while we get Jeff set up with his audio. Thank you. Arundus?
Yeah, just to maybe start the conversation on how to organize your data and things like that. And depending on your size of municipality and resources, but the basic would be Excel spreadsheets. My recommendation is always to probably move towards a database if you can. And if your municipality is greater in population than, I don't know, 7,500 to 10,000 in population, you are at a stage that you should definitely be looking at a database structure of some kind that will house and host all of your asset information. So everyone in the municipality, all departments, everyone is looking at the same data, and it's all hosted in one place. So there's no confusion of multiple data sets, multiple things scattered throughout the municipality. It's important to have it all located in one place, and everyone can then work from that one data set, and all eyes are looking at it. And that way you're going to have, I believe, more buy-in into the process because everyone has access to it for their purposes. And then if you do have the database, then you can start looking at what is the most appropriate software to help you move forward beyond that. So those would be my comments.
Thank you, Arundus. We have a comment saying that a municipality wants to move to a consolidated asset management database, but for now they are working with spreadsheets and GIS. And follow-up is, we do agree that there should be one database to rule them all. Thank you for that comment. And then Terry, you have a comment as well?
Yeah, I was going to say that I agree with the moving towards a single kind of source for information, and that supports asset management as well as so many other functions within the municipality. I think what's worth pointing out though is you have different types of assets, and therefore you may end up with different systems. And what I found in my history is that trying to change what's there and what works can be a big battle. So if you can make it work within their existing systems, that's kind of the way to go. So I guess what I've seen a lot of is on the linear side when you talk about roads and water and sewer and those linear systems. Obviously a GIS and having a good data model or database backend is the ideal way to go. And if you can tie that to your CMMS, to your asset management plans, whether they're Excel spreadsheets or they're more detailed systems like Ariba or something else. But if you can have control of that within the GIS or within a centralized data model, and you know that everyone's updating their piece of information, that's the best way to go. What I am seeing on the vertical side, though, when you talk about water plants, wastewater plants, buildings, those type of assets that don't have that graphic, the need for that graphic representation, which we take care of in the GIS. I find a lot of organizations are keeping their inventory in their CMMS, and that's just because they just happen to have one there. And if they have it there and they can update and pull from that source and do their asset management plans, it's a good place to get it, and you don't want to create it from scratch. And I think that makes sense. You just have to recognize that if you're maintaining it in your CMMS, you know that your operators and your operations departments are keeping that inventory up to date, but you may not make decisions at the same level as the data that's in there. So you may be making decisions on replacing a pump in your asset management plan and reporting it on your TCA, but in the CMMS they're going to have kind of a bill of materials or sub-assets in there about the pump, like the motor, the impeller, things like that. But if you can take on that philosophy of this is going to be our centralized source of data and maintain it, you're definitely going to be much further ahead as you continue to try and pull the information and generate these asset management plans on a regular basis. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, we'll try Jeff again from ESSA. Jeff, are you?
Yes, good afternoon.
Oh, great, thank you.
With ESSA Township, we did look at this as being an in-house project, and it was led by the finance department. And we're a small municipality, so we didn't have a lot of people that we had to draw in from the various departments. It was the department heads from each department who were brought into it. And one of the key things to start it off was to have the CAO put it on as the first item on the agenda for all the senior management team meeting agendas. And it stayed on there up until the plan was presented to council on December 17th. But we did also approach it on a comprehensive basis for all assets and all asset classes, because our roads, water, and sewer were not the ones with some of the highest needs. And if we focused only on the roads, water, and sewer to satisfy the province, then we would have been shortchanging ourselves on some of our other facilities, such as our arenas. It was certainly a large undertaking and not one that we were staffed up to handle. And in due course, I would hope that we could get some comprehensive software to put it all back together and move forward with future iterations of it. The plan also is we did not go to the public to consult. This was an election year, and that would not, I don't think that would have gone over well to be bringing it out at that time. But the plan as written now will be the public consultation document. And council has bought into the plan, but that's only in principle. There's still a large issue in terms of raising tax rates to finance all of the needs that have been identified. And hopefully that will move forward over time, and it will certainly be on an incremental basis.
Great, thank you very much. If anyone has any comments or questions for ESSA Township, feel free to type them in now or raise your hand. In the meantime, thank you very much, Jeff. And in the meantime, we're going to move to our next part of the webinar, which are some of the questions that were posed during the registration process. As a price of the admission, we had asked for registrants to submit a question that they would like answered during the webinar. So this is open to everybody, but certainly the experts and the municipalities feel free to raise your hand or type in the chat box to provide a comment or feedback. First question is, what is best practice for determining what the desired level of service is? And part B of that, a similar question that was also asked, is what have municipalities used as approaches to define levels of service for purposes of asset management practices? So does anyone have any comments on best practices or approaches for determining desired level of services? Arundus?
Yeah, I'd like to just maybe comment that this has really been answered by Mike in Newmarket, and I think the approach that they took is really the best start anyone can make. Is what are you doing now? What's the level of service you're offering now? And move it forward from there. To move forward from there will require more detailed financial and asset assessment to truly get a better understanding of where are we going with this, and what are the levels of service that the public, the clientele that you service really need as opposed to want, because there's a cost for it. And that becomes more challenging, and yet that process is a very healthy one. So I would agree with Mike in Newmarket and the Newmarket team. I think you did a great job to start, and then it's refining from there.
Thank you, Arundus. Dan, you have something to comment on? And then Andrew.
Yes. So what I try to emphasize when it comes to level of service is to try to relate your level of service analysis to some type of budget impact. So when you're talking current level of service, what I try to emphasize is you have a budget that you're currently following. What level of service are you providing with that budget? And then whatever you decide to do in terms of moving from current level of service to expected level of service, always go back and ask yourself, okay, if we do that, how does that change our budget? Because part of the emphasis of the level of service analysis is to try to feed the impact into the asset management strategy where you have your long-term operating and capital forecast. So treat your current budget as current level of service, and then anything that changes from a level of service perspective, try to determine what that does to your budget going forward.
Thank you, Dan. Andrew, you have a comment?
Yes, and I guess I couldn't agree more with Dan there, just really stressing the fact that you really want to relay what the cost of providing that service is, and that really sets the tone of how you can move forward. And I don't think you can get or set your target levels unless the community and yourselves understand what the cost of providing that service is. And also just kind of reflecting on a little bit what Mike was talking about and moving forward, I really think one of the key recommendations or best practices after you've kind of understood the current service level tracking and how you've been doing, but you really want to engage the community and the public to understand what they are expecting from you and what they're willing to pay for, and that'll really kind of start to steer you also in the right direction. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. So our next question that we have, is there a reference for small municipal Ontario volunteer fire service levels of service, aside from response times and aside from tanker shuttle service accreditation? Is there a reference for affordable small municipal Ontario library services, not gold-plated or sterling silver? Any comments or responses to that question? I'll read the question one more time. Is there a reference for small municipal Ontario volunteer fire service levels of service, aside from response times and aside from tanker shuttle services accreditation? Is there a reference for affordable small municipal Ontario library services, not gold-plated or sterling silver? Any responses or comments to that question? Terry? You have a comment, Terry?
Yeah, I was going to say, unfortunately, I don't know of anything myself in terms of a reference. But what I would say is, if you could, there will be either larger municipalities or municipalities similar to you in size around you that may have done some stuff that you could piggyback off of. So I know that we've done some work before with fire departments where we look at not just the we look at how many trucks have to be in municipality, how far they have to be from every house. So there's a bunch of levels of service that we identified, response times, things like that, how long trucks can be in service versus on call, because emergency trucks and fire trucks will have. In some cases, they'll keep in service for 7 or 8 years, and then they keep as a backup for 8 years. So I would say see if you can reference any other municipalities that may have done some stuff, and instead of starting from scratch, you can piggyback on their accomplishments.
Thank you.
We have a comment from Newmarket. We found that the MPMP can always be used as a good starting point. The BMA study can help with this as well. So thank you.
Any other comments or responses to that question? Okay, thank you very much. And our next question is, complexity of inventory, example, streetlights, just converted everything to LED. Lamps guaranteed for 20 years, while existing poles will probably last for another 50 years. Should I just use 20 years for replacement in general? Arundus?
Well, the first comment I would make is if you have a number of these poles and lights, then a first step might be in separating out the lights from the poles, and that gives you now an easy way of pooling those two sets of assets individually and tracking them in individual pools. The next comment is as you move forward, so that would be kind of the first level. The second level would be is what's the remaining life of those poles, and now tracking that. Once you've separated it out, now you can get a better assessment of really how long is that asset, individual asset, going to last with remaining life. Or you can group it in communities, because usually they're built by community in different sections. You can kind of bulk those communities together and get a quicker way of assessing timeline and really fine-tuning what the remaining life of those assets are. And I think that's kind of the fine-tuning process that some of the municipalities listening are going through right now.
Thank you. Any other comments or responses to that question? Okay. And our last question that we have from the registration questions, and I think we've already touched on this, but just in case anyone had any further thoughts, how do I get council buy-in? That question came up a couple of times with the registration question. So I think we've touched on this, but if anyone has any other additional thoughts on this, feel free to type it in the chat box or raise your hand. Thank you. Terry? Terry, you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I know that when there's been some comments about customer surveys and going to the public. And I just wanted to say something to think about is we see a lot of surveys go out, and they'll ask generic questions like, "Are you happy with the delivery of your water services or your garbage collection," things like that. And when you get those responses back, a lot of times they're hard to integrate into your pitch, I guess, to council to say, look, we've talked to the public, and they're happy with what's going on. What I've seen that works really well is make the questions more specific. So when you're going out to the public, maybe ask, on average, the household pays X dollars for garbage collection, a month or a year, whatever number you want to use, and just say, would you be willing to increase that by 20% to have garbage collected, to have unlimited collection, or have garbage collected on a more regular basis? Or would you actually be willing to decrease that cost per household and have, your recycling collected every 2 weeks as opposed to every week? And same thing with the, other types of assets. If you could talk about, let's say water and the quality of water. We can't really impact the quality of water, but the number of breaks or downtime or things like that, and actually equate it to, this is what you pay. Are you willing to pay? Would you be willing to pay more to improve this, or would you be willing to pay less to actually reduce your level of service? I think that's an important thing if you're going to go out and hit the public, because it actually tells you, based on our responses, and obviously it's not perfect, but it actually tells you what we're getting back is that people are they'd be willing to pay more for better service, or they may be willing to pay for more parks, things like that. So I think if you can make those questions more specific, they're going to help your case.
Great, thanks, Terry. Any other comments, questions, responses to anything that has been said? And at this point, we're going to move on to our last format agenda item. Is just open discussion and information sharing, successes, tips, challenges, anything that anyone wants to touch on that hasn't already been discussed, or questions posed. And while we're waiting for people to type in the chat box or to raise their hand, we're just going to quickly remind you of some upcoming MFOA initiatives.
So last year there was the 2014 Asset Management Symposium, and this year we're continuing on with that. It's going to take place on March 24th and 25th in Markham, and it's a partnership between MFOA and LAS. And so, now what? And it's open for registration. You can follow the link. The second we have is your toolkit for asset management. We have that featured on our website. And then last is the asset management roadmap we have with LAS as well. And what you can do is you can click on the links to read more about those items.
Okay, so we don't have any other questions, comments, or concerns. If you think of something after the webinar has closed down, feel free to email Krista Klesch, and I will certainly pass that along to our experts, and that's it for now. I'll hand it over to Eunice.
And I really want to thank you all today for participating. Thank you to our panel of experts, Terry, Arundus, Dan, and Andrew, for joining us today. Your comments and feedbacks were great. Also to Jeff and Mike for sharing your experiences with your municipalities. So for additional resources on a broad range of topics, please visit MFOA's virtual library. The library is your one-stop shop for policies, RFPs, guides, legislation, and regulations from across the province. Visit www.mfoa.on.ca/library today. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.